So I covered this the other day. A protester was murdered in Minneapolis at a protest over the police assassination of a man named Winston Smith. This is the guy. And so I'm going to be reading this from unicornriot.ninja. Minneapolis, Minnesota. 3 additional felony charges have been filed against Nicholas Kraus, Kraus? I don't know. The driver who attacked a Winston Smith protest, killing Deona Marie Erickson and injuring others. The Hennepin County Attorney's Office has charged Kraus with second-degree intentional murder and 2 counts of second-degree assault with a dangerous weapon after initially charging him with criminal vehicular homicide, driving after license cancellation, and giving false information to the police. On Sunday night, June 13th, 31-year-old Deona Marie Erickson was with dozens of others holding a space of protest and grieving at the intersection near a parking ramp where law enforcement killed Winston Smith 10 days earlier. Deona Marie had been a daily presence at the protest, and that night, after a large march and rally, she parked her car on the side of Lake Street, taking the right lane in a manner which would protect the protesters on the sidewalk. As she was on the sidewalk just before midnight, she was fatally struck by Kraus's car attack. 2 others were injured and had to be hospitalized, and the rest of the crowd was left traumatized. I also want to, it's important to understand that, her birthday was, a couple days ago, right? That's one of those things that's crazy to me. Because, I can't. It's just horrifying. It's horrifying. And, who knows what's going to happen to this dude up here? Who knows what's going to happen to this dude? I hope he goes to jail for the rest of his life, right? Or, for a reasonable amount of time. But, I'm always scared that when the media stops reporting on these cases, that they're just going to, give them a slap on the wrist. We have a similar incident in Elizabeth City where we had a car attack. Fortunately, no one was killed. But, we are very worried that they're going to get a slap on the wrist. And this is one of those things where, again, you see states like Florida pass laws that say, oh, you can kill any pedestrian at any time, and it's all good, bro, because there's no such thing as pedestrians in Florida. There's no such thing as a right-of-way. Everyone walking on the streets is a rioter, and if they're a rioter, they can be executed by your car. That's what the fucking state of Florida says, right? And so, that's what's crazy, is because the state of Florida saying that is indicative of, that's what about 20% of the country believes. There's about a solid 1/5 of the country that just thinks, oh, you're walking in a crosswalk, executed, death penalty. Oh, you're on the sidewalk, executed, death penalty. Right? It's ridiculous. It's horrifying, and it's just disgusting. And you can watch here, there's an interview with the person who dragged this guy out of the car. You can watch that if you want. I'll put the link in the description. But let's read the rest of this here. According to the criminal complaint, Kraus admitted he saw that people were beyond a barricade set up to protect him, and that he floored the accelerator in attempts to jump the barricade. Is this motherfucker playing Grand Theft Auto trying to do an insane stunt jump? Seriously, bro, are you stupid? Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman stated that Kraus was intoxicated, and that his admittance to intentionally driving toward the protesters is an important factor in them charging Kraus with murder. This motherfucker, 1, got into a car while drunk. 2, drove toward a protest that he knew was happening. 3, drove into the crowd of protesters. And 4, murdered someone. I'm sorry, throw away the motherfucking key as far as I'm concerned. The defendant, Mr. Kraus, in the Uptown fatal incident in which he struck and killed a peaceful female protester, was while intoxicated and injured additional protesters, and is an extreme and violent intentional act. His behavior and admittance to intentionally driving toward the protesters is one important reason why we have charged him with intentional second-degree murder. After the vehicle that Kraus crashed into Deona's car, witnesses say Kraus tried to run away. Kraus was restrained by activist Tony Clark, who turned him over to the police 2 nights later during a police operation clearing Winston Smith protesters. We heard from Clark about his experience that fatal night. He spoke about Deona, the crash, turning Kraus over to the police, and the need for Kraus to face additional charges for his actions. You can watch this interview later. It's about 11 minutes. I watched it either the other day. It's something, it's good to watch. You got to keep privy on these situations, especially in a situation, if you're going out to protest, it's important to follow other cities, other towns, other countries' protest tactics. See what people are doing, how they respond, how they react, what people say, because again, you never know when you're going to find yourself in this kind of situation. And it's just horrifying. So, it's just horrifying. I mean, again, we had a similar situation here in Elizabeth City about a month ago now, where a car drove into the crowd and they could have killed people, right? It's just one of those things, like, if someone were, an inch closer to the right, they could have been underneath the car and had their fucking brain cracked open by a fucking tire. It was just by the grace of God that they weren't. You know what I mean? And it's like, these are the situations that are going on. Like, these people want to kill us. For what reason? Like, again, what's the order of operations here? Police murder someone, right? Let's even go back to George Floyd. George Floyd is murdered, right? The entire world finds that extremely problematic. And there's an uprising all across the world, and especially in Minneapolis, right? And so someone who responds to that uprising by saying that peaceful protests don't work, Winston Smith, is then executed by nameless squadrons of U.S. Marshals. Sound familiar, by the way? Oh, by the way, this is not in Trump's America. This is in Biden's America. Where's mainstream news? Have you seen any? Has CNN covered Winston Smith at all? They covered the hell out of George Floyd. Why not Winston Smith, right? So, Winston Smith, someone who is, notably very much so not a fan of peaceful protesters, because again, or peaceful protests, because again, they don't work. Like, we know that for a fact. Peaceful protests do not work. Now, is that an endorsement of violence? No. Is that an endorsement of other tactics? Maybe. But what I am saying is peaceful protests do not work. They have worked exactly 0% of the time that they have attempted to be I don't want to use that word. That they have been, tried. They have worked 0 times. 0 out of however many thousands and thousands and thousands of examples of peaceful protests. There's exactly 0 cases of them actually succeeding and gaining anything, right? And so that's just an observable reality. But for that reality, he was executed by a squadron of nameless federal fucking troops, okay? And then so peaceful people then peacefully protest that murder, right? And for that, they are murdered. And then the cops come in, and if you remember, they released a statement that said, well, they shouldn't have been walking in the streets. That's what the cops said. That's what the Minneapolis Police Department said. Their official statement was, well, shouldn't have been playing in traffic, bitch. That was their fucking statement. And it's just disgusting. This is the world that we live in. You need to understand, cops are not your friend. There is no such thing as a good cop. They're all garbage. They're all going to kill you. It's just a matter of when and where, right? Like, I just, it's horrifying. It's horrifying. This whole thing is just horrifying. And it's just horrifying.